Hello, this is Kent Philpott again. Program number 4 in our series on Santeria, from slavery to slavery. I want to talk about Santeria and the cultural anthropologist, which is some of the work that I read in preparation for this, works that cultural anthropologists have done in studying the phenomenons in the old world and in the new world. When I graduated from college, I had enough credits to have gotten a degree in psychology, sociology, and cultural anthropology. All three. I picked psychology. That was my main field. I was going to be a school psychologist, and so I understand a little bit about cultural anthropology and the value of their work. But let me read just a little bit from my paper. And this is Santeria and the cultural anthropologist, for making up the majority of this fourth program. Cultural anthropologists study ethnic groups in order to understand the dynamics of that people group. These scientists do not make value judgments on the political and religious institutions that they find. Beliefs and practices are interesting and may all, academically speaking, have equal value. Perhaps unless the belief system is causing considerable suffering and mayhem. But generally, anthropologists do not make a point of evaluating the truth or fiction or moral correctness of a religious system. The African slaves were courageously, ingeniously able to keep their community intact by various mechanisms, not least of which was their belief and worship of the Orishas. I'm not a cultural anthropologist, thus my valuation of Santeria will not be so sanitized. This should not come as a surprise, but in terms of survivability, resistance to extinction, and simply the courage to struggle to escape the crushing impact of slavery and poverty, this was commendable in itself, but the West African slaves were able to achieve. Now, what I mean by that is that when you take a look at a religious system in any ethnic group, there's a tendency to just describe, of course, but it makes it seem as if there's no intrinsic reality to the religion. It almost could be that, well, every people have to make sense of the human circumstance, to come up with reasons for existence, and especially for the tragedies of life, the difficulties, the problems, the pains of life, and especially death. And so various peoples will come up with ways of comforting themselves. The surviving of death, for instance, giving reason for pain and suffering. Well, we're familiar with these things, and as I said, it almost makes religion a let's pretend sort of situation, not real, sort of fairy tale land. And that is what you would tend to get if you were just an open book going through cultural anthropology studies at a college or university. But my view is different, that there is a reality, there is a God reality. Many people are aware of this. Many people know it, first-hand experience. They are convinced. They are not either atheists or agnostics. And although cultural anthropology may be interesting to them and of value, yet it does not reduce religion to it's all the same attempt at understanding the world in which we live. So I want to make that point. And at this point, I'm not going to go into the Christian worldview and why I feel like and believe that that is the correct interpretation of the human existence on this planet. There is a creator God from whom we fell away, the fall, to whom we belong and who reaches out to us in love and mercy and grace and brings us to himself in the person of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So that is my worldview. That is where I am coming from and from which I base my work here. So now to continue. One of the things that happened to Santeria was the introduction of Spiritism to the religion. Let me read from my paper. All I have to do is get the pages unstuck. Okay. Spiritism, which is primarily the concept that the dead live on and may be contacted, impacted Santeria in the 19th century through the writings of Hippolyte Leon Denizard Rivail, better known by his pen name Allan Kardec. That's K-A-R-D-E-C. He was born in 1904, Lyon, France. He became interested in a strange phenomenon that was sweeping America and Europe's upper classes, since it was considered to be related to science, this thing that they called spirit tapping. The Fox sisters of Hydesville, New York, in 1848 began experiencing what they thought were the sounds and sights of spirits of the dead attempting to communicate with the living. The game was on to understand this phenomenon, and it later moved into something best left to mediums, those with special contact or talent for contacting the dead. So, but Santeria, of course, was ripe to be captured by Spiritism. The main tenets of Spiritist doctrine are, and I retained this from, I believe, Joseph Murray's book, there is a God defined as, quote, the supreme intelligence and primary cause of everything. And that, of course, easily fits the God concept of Santeria. 2, there are spirits, all of whom are created simple and ignorant, but owning the power to gradually perfect themselves. Now that's interesting, that these spirits of the dead are not perfect. In matter of fact, when they contact people, the idea is that if they are elevated spirits, they can help the living, but if they're just the simple and ignorant, the living can help these agoons or these spirits to be more perfected and to go in the right direction. 3, the natural method of this perfection process is reincarnation, through which the spirit faces countless different situations, problems, and obstacles, and needs to learn how to deal with them. 4, as part of nature, spirits can naturally communicate with living people as well as interfere in their lives. This dovetails nicely with long-standing Santeria views. And then last, 5, many planets in the universe are inhabited, and not a problem for Santeria. Now, to accomplish contact with spirits, Allan Kardec's movement, often called Mesa Blanca, began using small groups of mediums to assist in the communicating. This worked perfectly into the thought system of Santeria people. The Egun, these departed spirits of the dead, could be contacted by their own medium, the initiated. The Santeros and Santeras, who would be mounted by the Orishas and possessed by the Orishas. After a time, the old practices from Africa used to contact the Egun have been set aside largely, and the common practices of contemporary mediums have been substituted. The spiritualistic seances, at minimum, have supplemented the way of the Orishas. Now then, all fell into place. The Orisha worship of Africa folded into a Catholic setting and was then impacted by American and European Spiritism. Now, at the very conclusion here, I want to bring up something I'm going to bring up several times. How do we know what's true? Just because somebody says something is true, how do we know it's true? there are the true believers, the people who are invested in it, who have committed themselves to it, perhaps raised in the traditions. They will be the most zealous and the most unshakable. But every person must ask themselves the question, what is truth really? It is not very healthy nor happy to spend a life headed in the wrong direction, to be embracing those things that are in fact untrue. They may be nice, they may be comforting, but if they're untrue, that is not a good foundation on which to build a life. So I want to bring that up. On what authority do we know is true? For example, what is the authority for the West African religions? Was that by divine revelation? Did it develop slowly over a period of time? And you can see quite easily when you study it that it did. What is the nature of it? What is the authority? How do we know? Those are important questions to be asking. Okay, that is the ending of program number 4.